Everyone, I'll be guiding you through a mini podcast. Why does the charge increase? And what do we really need to wake up from? There are so many questions and so few answers so far, but hang in there. We're going to unravel it all, and we'll discuss suffering from a completely different perspective. In life, this happens too. For example, we get lost in life, go somewhere we shouldn't, have a fight with someone, go to a job we don't like, even though something inside warned us not to go. We start dating someone we feel we shouldn't even be with. Then at some point we wake up and think, oh, I forgot my bank card at home. The next day, we wake up and feel uneasy, go outside and forget where our car is. Then gradually, anxiety builds up, stress grows, sadness, anger, guilt, shame follow. This can eventually lead to complete despair. Therefore, suffering in this form is not a cause, it is always a consequence. It's more of a tool that tries to highlight that something in our life is off track. We've gone the wrong way. In fact, the real enemy is called something completely different, and we'll talk about that shortly. But before that, let me tell you a metaphor I didn't want to share but will because I came up with it for a reason. My wife and I were recently discussing how suffering can look, and I realized that the Winx Club is a perfect example. For 5 episodes, they fight different enemies, easily defeating them. But in the 6th episode, they meet a big, tough boss. They fly in all confident, thinking we'll defeat him, but they can't. Their wings drop, and they experience a crisis. This crisis is called a bifurcation point. A bifurcation point is when we either rise above the situation and move forward with greater strength and abilities, or we give up and fall downward. In the Winx Club, their value system becomes stronger during the crisis, and they defeat the enemy. They experience suffering, but through that situation, they learn a lesson, which makes them better, and they ultimately rise to a new level of existence. Now, the real enemy is not suffering itself. Suffering is just a signal. I mentioned in another video that it highlights something wrong. The real enemy is something else, and I'll explain why we suffer unexpectedly. The enemy is illusions that we create in our lives. We create them through various means, which we'll talk about in a moment. But first, let's define what an illusion is. I have a cat named Günther, a Bengal cat, and I constantly fill his water bowl saying, "Günther, drink here." But he always drinks from the toilet instead. That's my personal illusion. But in general, illusions are protective mechanisms. They're something our brain creates to shield us from stress, conflict, discomfort, or fear. An illusion looks like this. Imagine a mother raising a strong, tough man. But until he's 18, she protects him from every difficult situation in life. She runs to him when there's a fight, saying, "Vanya, Vanya, I'm going to protect you," and she shields him from all life's challenges. But when he turns 18, she lets him go into the world, and suddenly he realizes that the life he's been living isn't real. He's never experienced true life before. What happens then is that life will either teach him something very important or completely destroy him. So, there are certain tools of suffering that help. There are tools of illusions that create them, and everyone experiences these in their life. Let's dive into them as much as we can and discuss them in detail. First, how can we suffer? 1. Not hearing yourself plus jumping from the 14th floor. Illusions are not hearing yourself. For 5 years, I convinced myself of one thing, that success is the most important thing in my life, and that success means money. Every time I had 2 choices. One was to engage in something I loved, something that made me feel on top of the world, happy as could be, which turned out to be blocked for me. The other choice was always to choose money in the moment. That thing where people say, "Leoha, it's guaranteed, there's going to be money now, we'll make a great launch, we'll rake it in." And of course, I always chose money because I thought that was the main priority. But when this project ended, I felt this rottenness inside, like something was eating me from within. For 5 years, I adhered to this mindset, trying to convince myself that money was the most important thing, even though pursuing what you love and money are not mutually exclusive. And I remember 2 years ago, I wanted to jump from the 14th floor, and I told all my relatives, who were shocked. They all supported me, but I needed to confront this situation at that moment. Only when I hit rock bottom did I realize that I didn't want to exist in this world anymore, because I wasn't capable of making a choice for myself. Only then was I able to come back to life and finally begin doing what brought us here today. I am truly grateful to you all for subscribing to my channel and leaving so many comments. We will continue to move forward together. By the way, right now I have a friend in the exact same situation, where it's hard for him to choose between some social success and choosing himself. This is called the illusion of knowledge, the illusion of knowing what you want. It seems like someone else's definition of success is your own. So don't create that illusion, or at least try to catch yourself in it. Also, how do you feel about the vibe of this video? Let me know, too. That old Disney one. It's more comfortable as usual. Or something else. You know, there won't be points here like this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. This is more about what I've encountered, illusions we create in many different ways. And this is just something that's been happening in my life and something you might relate to. The second thing we're talking about here, and there won't be any points, is that we don't accept ourselves. The most vivid example of not accepting yourself that I recall from my childhood is my favorite cartoon, The Little Mermaid. I don't know why, but my parents tell me I watched it about 20 times, maybe more. Do you remember The Little Mermaid with the crab Sebastian? Tudu. The essence of this cartoon is that the mermaid with a fishy tail liked a guy on land, and she thought, he has legs and the girls he likes have legs, so I need legs too. Because without them, he won't like me. This is a very clear example of not accepting your external self and your internal self as well. In real life, it can happen that we like someone, and at that moment, we think, I'm not good enough for him/her if I have this flaw, or he won't like me if he knows I don't have parents, or he won't like me unless I fix this dimple. We take some internal characteristic and suppress it in ourselves. But the key point is that when the man meets the woman, he immediately feels something is off, like she's not authentic. And at that moment, all her illusions fall apart. She realizes she's been trying to pretend to be some perfect person who doesn't exist in real life, and she fails. Nowadays, people are incredibly sensitive. They can feel when something's fake, like attracts like. If you want something real, be as open and authentic as possible. Show your weaknesses. You won't end up like Achilles, who was shot in the heel and died because everyone knew his weakness. Authenticity means I'm just here, bearing everything. This is me, and I don't want to be anyone else. I don't give advice often, but I do encourage you to give yourself fully to the world. Don't hide yourself. 3. Suppressing your emotions. There's an amazing book I love, written by Neil Cass, inspired by the real-life person Billy Milligan. Recently, Tom Holland, the current Spider-Man, starred in a movie adaptation of this book, with a modern twist. A lot of smart words there. But the essence of the book is about a young man who faced many difficult situations in his life, including sexual abuse and various forms of violence. For example, when some guys attacked him, instead of confronting the situation, he suppressed it by creating an alternate personality within himself. This led to 12 different personalities because he didn't want to face those challenges. He suppressed them in himself. This is something we all do. We put on different masks in stressful situations. For example, at work, we can't express our personal opinions when someone yells at us or manipulates us. We act all nice, even though inside we want to say, I just want to kill you, and I'm going to quit this job and hire a killer. Well, obviously we don't do that, but we play these roles. Or when we're with our parents, we suppress our emotions and act like obedient children because they interrupt us or shout at us. But when we're not at work or with our parents, we can show our true selves at home with our spouses. We're confident, open, and we communicate like real tigers or lions. But the problem is, all this pretending, wearing masks, consumes a huge amount of our energy. The worst thing is that it can lead to emotional anemia, a state where we suppress strong emotions like anger, sadness, despair, and in the end, we don't feel positive emotions anymore either. We start living like a character from The Matrix, trapped in a tunnel with no real life, just a one-way road from life to the grave. Emotions need to be experienced. Don't leave them inside. If you can't express your emotions in a tough situation, find an outlet. For me, it was martial arts. Yoga is an amazing way for women. Dancing is a fantastic way too, or just go out in the field and scream your heart out. So I wish you all the best, and let's move on to the fourth point. 4. Running away from yourself. There are two amazing works related to this. The first one is a film, and the second one is an animated movie. The first is King Arthur, a story about Excalibur, and the second one is about Simba, the Lion King. By the way, it's funny because I constantly watch The Lion King with my little one. He says, "Dad, you're Mufasa and I'm Simba." And I say, "Yes, but I'm alive in King Arthur." In King Arthur, there's a moment when the king realizes he has to fight the main villain, the evil sorcerer who killed his father. However, he doesn't want to admit that this man killed his father and that he's the true king. He runs away from his camp, trying to hide, and at one point he falls into a puddle, but it turns out to be a large lake with a slight acidity. In the puddle, a kind sorceress shows him what the world will look like if he doesn't act, if he doesn't intervene. The world is in ruins, with fire everywhere, everything burned down. At that moment, he pulls the sword out of the lake again and decides that he will fight and take responsibility. Because running away from yourself is first and foremost running away from responsibility. Simba's story is similar. He thinks he killed his father. When he runs away, he believes he has no more connection to the royal family. But later, when he understands it wasn't him who killed his father, but Scar, he accepts responsibility and realizes he is the king's son, and he will fight for it. This may sound a bit dramatic, but the point is that if we don't take responsibility for our goals, our desires, and our choices, we simply cannot live a full life. Instead, we choose to live according to someone else's script. A canvas is a narrow path that someone else has carved for us, a path chosen by others. And trust me, someone will definitely make choices for you, because you, as an energy resource, are needed by other people. For example, if you work in a company but you're actually a singer, and you avoid taking responsibility by not quitting your job and finally pursuing your passion, or if you're in a relationship with someone you know isn't the right person for you, but you stay because you don't take responsibility for walking away, that's avoiding responsibility. The coolest thing you can do in such situations is to take responsibility. Start by speaking out loud what you truly want. Tell your partner that perhaps your paths are diverging and you can no longer align with each other. Dispelling illusions is one of the first steps. Let's move on. Now, let's talk about two metaphors related to illusions. The first is a sink that's clogged but not fully. When you pour water in, it starts to pool, but after a while, the water drains out. You don't even realize it's clogged. Illusions are like this, accumulated over time like debris. The pain we feel is like a cleaning agent that pushes everything through. It's unpleasant, especially if it's in the sink, but it's necessary for the flow of energy within us to be restored so that we can continue living a full life. Illusions themselves are not inherently bad. They try to protect us, first and foremost. Remember the movie The Truman Show? It's a bit like that. They create an artificial world with borders, and we think we live only within those borders, like some conspiracy theory or the Matrix movie. But in reality, we live in that artificial world and think nothing exists beyond it. The illusion, like in The Truman Show, is that we start to suspect that something is wrong with our lives, but we can't comprehend it logically. It's something we understand only with our feelings or through a moment when we face reality, like that 18-year-old kid we mentioned earlier. The most important tool we have is to face reality. And pain, even though it's difficult, wants us to become better, to level up. Disappointment, despite being perceived negatively, is a key moment. Disappointment helps us see reality clearly. We finally realize the sun exists, the sky is real, and we don't live in some artificial box. This is the moment of freedom for our hearts. We can finally unleash our potential. Yes, we may have lost what we had before, but why hold on to the artificial? Is that life, living in a fabricated world for someone else? Some people go back to the illusion, like taking a pill in the Matrix, while others choose to confront something new and open up to a new, wonderful world. That's where all the potential lies. In that moment, we can develop our talents and understand why we were born. And third, we find meaning. We realize why we're living this life. The greatest illusion, when you think about it, is that we're not living our own life. Am I living my life? The key question is, who am I in this life? How to recognize psychological illusions in your life. 1. Why? For. What for? A little how-to on how to detect illusions in your life. It's called 1 What For, 4 Whys. Let's take an example. You get angry about something, and the trigger is, well, let's first discuss something. If you get triggered, let's say you get upset because someone gets a lot of views on YouTube, or you're mad because some father with his happy family is walking around, or some 16-year-old punk made $1 million and is showing it off. This is the call of your illusion in that moment. It starts to collapse, showing itself, trying to stabilize somehow, trying to stay afloat. Because, well, what happens in our head is that we live our life, go to work, argue with our spouse, but those guys have everything fine and perfect. Maybe there's an alternative life out there? No, it's just a lie. This can't happen. The only excuse we have is that we get mad at seeing some ideal picture and don't believe it could actually exist. Then, a couch critic is born who writes negative comments. By the way, I haven't seen a single negative comment myself. Feel free to write some criticism if you want. So, this tool is actually great at exposing such things. For example, we ask ourselves, why am I angry at this guy? I'm angry at this guy because he annoys me. From anger to irritation. Then we ask ourselves, what for do I need this irritation? And at that moment, we realize, wait, what do I really need this irritation for? I need it to feel safer. And then you go, aha, and why do I need to feel safe? To preserve some part of my world. And just like that, you can go through the 4 what fors. Sometimes asking why and then what for opens up a whole picture for you. Or we might ask, why am I with this guy? Why am I with this woman? And then an answer emerges. After that, we keep asking, what for and what for? I once heard a wise woman say, you can only leave somewhere if you know where you're going. In our lives, suffering and illusions grow when we can't see some picture or some vision of our future. This doesn't mean you should live in the future, but it means that we can imagine and immerse ourselves with all our senses to feel where we are heading and why we are doing it. And at that moment, questions about who am I and why do I need all of this simply fade away. And that's all. The important thing is, if you think this video can help someone, don't send it to them because their life may improve. Sending it could change their life. Hugged you. Bye.